A couple of days ago, I was at the barber shop, and my barber asked me, why do you go by the moniker, the accidental banker? And I said to her, I looked at her and I said, when we are kids, we all believe that we're going to grow up to do something very specific. And when we go to college, if we choose to go to college, we believe that we're going to do something very specific. And I said, you know, the vast majority of people that I engage with, if I asked them, are they doing what they thought they would be doing, they said no. So we are all accidental somethings. Good morning. It's good to be here. As you have heard, I met Tom some years back while I was at United Way. I am pleased that in my transition over at the bank 3 years ago, that I'm able to maintain my connection with Tom. So why did Tom invite me here to speak? Maybe it is because he knows of my background as the CEO of United Way, where we work to understand the systems necessary to stabilize people's lives and actually act on that knowledge. Or perhaps it's because he knows my story of becoming the accidental banker and Midwest BankCentre's efforts to democratize access to opportunity and capital for all. Both of those career achievements and my body of work were unlikely given what could have been the trajectory of my life and the prevailing attitudes around race. I believe that Tom invited me here because he knows that I have an appreciation for life, the opportunities I've been exposed to, the doors that have been opened, the friendships that I have acquired across the income, employment, and racial spectrum. He knows my appreciation for the mentors in my life who have helped me navigate tough circumstances, and they've helped me navigate systems. Tom knows that I have a great love for the St. Louis region in all of its complexity. He knows that I believe that you can live in a place, love a place, while at the same time hold high ideas about what that place can become. I believe fundamentally that the quality of our lives is intimately related to the nature of our aspirations. And I want the St. Louis region to aspire to greatness, not mediocrity. Let me go back to the spring of 1997. I was an undergraduate student at the University of Missouri in Columbia. Now, I got into college a few years earlier on the thinnest of margins with low grades and even lower test scores. I was born in East St. Louis and raised in the foster care system in North St. Louis. Each year that I achieved academically in college, I grew more confident in my ability to persist and do what so many thought was improbable. On this particular spring day of reflection, I remember it being a great day. I was feeling good about life, hopeful to make it out of school and thus out of the generational poverty I was born into. My area of study, social work, grabbed my attention like no other. At its core, social work is about understanding people within the context of their environment. It's about looking at the whole person, about asking, what happened to you, instead of what is wrong with you? The very act of framing the question that way acknowledges that there are root causes to behavior, and individual's behavior cannot be adequately understood without considering his or her broader environment and the systems that surround them. I've been thinking a lot about our systems over the last 20 years. I believe that human systems are designed to conspire for or against our success. While race is a social construct that some have the privilege not to see, I see the impact of race every day. Folks, it is hard to deny that racism, defined as the systemic allocation of resources that doles out influence, that doles out justice and economic opportunity based on skin color, doesn't exist. It is hard to deny that race doesn't influence every aspect of one's life, from housing to healthcare to employment, education, and yes, even in my industry, banking. The key aspect of structural or systemic racism is that these macro level mechanisms operate independent of the intentions and actions of individuals. This very truth alone informs my optimism. It informs my passion, my persistence, and strong belief around the possibility for shared prosperity. Shared prosperity is about sharing power. It's about providing justice and nurturing the conditions for creating wealth. Wealth creation is about the ability to work and earn a living wage, to own a home, to start or scale a business, to educate our children, and to live a healthy, self-determined life. It's about giving everybody, every one of us, a place at the starting line. All of us in this room are in a position to influence our systems. We share responsibility and accountability to work differently to affect meaningful change. As you have heard me say a moment ago, I believe that our present-day system for allocating resources and opportunity should be of concern to all of us. And if we are in the St. Louis region want to aspire to greatness, we must acknowledge the isms that hold us back and do the necessary work to change. When I was growing up, there were disproportionately more Black and brown people in the foster care system. There were disproportionately more people of color in prison. There were disproportionately more people of color on welfare. There were disproportionately more Black and brown people unemployed. There were disproportionately more Black and brown people underbanked. We had proportionally fewer businesses. We lacked proportional access to credit. We were poorer in health and wealth when compared to the majority population. And if we are brutally honest, we would say that while some Black and brown people as individuals have so-called made it by the prevailing standards of success, Black and brown people are still overrepresented at the bottom of our society. Now, part of systems thinking is to challenge our underlying assumptions and mental models, those ideas that operate in the background of our consciousness, and they are just assumed. By default, you have a belief about why there are not more women and why there are not more Black and brown workers working alongside you. You have a thought about why there is not more construction capacity from either of those populations. You have a thought about why Black and brown people don't have access to credit or don't own their fair share of businesses. You have a thought. Systems thinking requires that you pause. It requires that you pause and challenge your assumptions. As an example, it is a commonly held belief that all one needs to be successful in our society is personal agency. All one needs is to choose a path and act on the world. This bootstrap theory of self-improvement and personal progress through personal initiative alone couldn't be further from the truth. When I look across our country and think about the state of many of our rural communities who account for a significant portion, 1/5 of the US population, I see people who, on average, when compared to their metro counterpart, are economically deprived. People who live in these rural areas, they are sicker and poorer than those who reside in metro areas because work has disappeared. And unfortunately, our national policies have not been aligned to help them retool. Our national policies have yet to help create the incentives for the private sector to create new employment opportunities at scale. Is it our assumption that our neighbors in rural America are shiftless and lack ambition? Would you be inclined to pathologize them as a people and simply tell them that all they need is personal initiative? Of course not. I think with this example, we can all see a broader system at play. Folks, we have to challenge our assumptions. I believe and understand that personal agency, that personal initiative, it is absolutely core to success. At the same time, I believe and understand that there are systems at play that conspire against personal agency. And to overcome these systems, we have to understand our part in perpetuating them. We have to be motivated to change. We have to hold a vision for where we are trying to go. That vision has to be compelling. That vision has to be more intriguing than our current place. That vision has to be about personal and economic growth, not scarcity. I believe we have a shared responsibility and accountability to find solutions that overcome historical isms. Those isms have been etched into the fabric of our institutions and are formidable to acknowledge, let alone overcome. Sometimes we don't acknowledge a thing. We don't acknowledge a thing like racism. We don't acknowledge a thing like discrimination. We don't acknowledge a thing like bias because we believe we are incapable of feeling any emotion beyond guilt, that we are incapable of doing anything meaningful to make a difference. I don't think that guilt is a sustainably productive, and I do believe that we as human beings have the capacity to evolve. I've always believed in the power of people and in the power of relationships. I've also believed in enlightened self-interest. I'm reminded of this statement by former President Bill Clinton. There is no difference between selfish and selfless if you understand how the world works. We live in an interdependent world. Every time you cut off someone else's opportunities, you shrink your own horizons. I think shared prosperity and equity is an economic imperative for the future of our country. Many of us have seen this statistic that according to the National Civic League, by 2050, our country stands to realize an $8 trillion gain in GDP by closing the US racial equity gap. Closing the gap means lessening and ultimately eliminating disparities and opportunity differentials that limit human potential and economic contributions of people of color. To facilitate a sustainable path forward to shared prosperity, folks, we have to rethink how we foster equity, how we foster diversity and inclusion across our spheres of influence within industry and within communities. Consider this most recent national data from the US Census Bureau. The white adult population, age 18 and over, went from 74.7% in 2010 to 64.1% in 2020. Did you hear me? 74 to 64. The multicultural adult population increased from 2.1% in 2010 to 8.8% in 2020. And in 2019, for the first time, more than half of the nation's population under the age of 16 identified as a racial or ethnic minority. Among this group, Latino or Hispanic and Black residents together comprise nearly 40% of the population. Contrast those numbers with this. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, about 11 million people are employed in the construction industry nationally, of which nearly 90% of the workers are white. Those numbers not only explain the labor shortages that many of you may be facing now, but they also point to the need for a wholesale change of heart to compete. Now hear me, to compete and to thrive in the future. And there is this matter of enlightened self-interest. If those numbers don't motivate you, those of you who are in power right now, to think differently for the future of your corporations, let me reframe it this way. We know that America is aging. Within the next 20 years, more than 70 million baby boomers will be retiring. We've seen this accelerate in the last 2 years. Many boomers, including those in this room, will have savings to live on. Some, unfortunately, will not. In the United States, most entitlement programs to assist the elderly, such as Social Security, is based on what? It's funded through the work and earnings of those in the labor force. One major question that we must all think about as we grapple with the Great Resignation and the Great Retirement is, will we have enough workers to support your Social Security check? If the vast majority of the population under 18 is browning, and we are not pipelining those young people into living wage construction and other jobs, it will create a more precarious situation for you and I as we reach retirement. Because it's instructive, let me provide just a brief glimpse into my own organization's journey over the past decade in becoming a more diverse and inclusive organization and striving to create economic opportunity for more people. In 2009, a local equal housing organization accused our bank, Midwest BankCentre, of redlining. They accused us of withholding home loans from North St. Louis neighborhoods who all too often are considered by most financial institutions poor economic risks. As you know, redlining is the discriminatory practice of denying financial and other services to residents of certain areas based on their race or ethnicity. Now, less than 10 years later, we are recognized as a national leader in community and economic development. So how do we get there? Midwest BankCentre's story is not about a wholesale change of people. Rather, it's one of a wholesale change of heart. Our vision got bigger. Instead of simply checking the boxes, leadership was willing to see systems that were broken and work to fix them. They didn't make excuses. They didn't embrace the short-lived commitments to change or paralysis that sometimes comes from guilt. They committed themselves to think differently, engage with partners differently, and more than anything, they oriented themselves toward measurable action even when things were not fully planned. They were thoughtful. Those leaders, they did not overthink, they did not overplan. This wholesale change took being comfortable with being uncomfortable. It took commitment from our shareholders. It took commitment from our board. It took commitment from our management. It took energy, it took strategy, and it took capital. And more than anything, it took leadership examining and challenging their assumptions. Now, I don't claim that we have everything right. We fall short of the victory lap, but through sustained effort, we've made great progress. Given time and continued work, I am confident that we will be part of lifting what will be a generation out of poverty through economic equity and mobility. So I believe there is a shared responsibility and accountability to find solutions that push the region forward toward greatness. I'm sick and tired. I am sick and tired of our region being framed as they have a lot of assets, and yet they will not move forward. They will not compete. They will not grow unless they commit to addressing their greatest liability, the lack of shared prosperity because of race. I'm reminded of the work that Bruce Katz did for local corporations who were concerned about growth in the region, and they wanted to understand why we were not growing. And so they put together this STL 2030 plan. If you have not read it, you should go and read it. He said, and I quote, "The St. Louis metro area is unusually rich in assets. We have a deep financial services sector and a globally significant bioscience cluster. We have a thriving startup ecosystem. We have innovative corporations. We have major institutions like BJC and WashU and UMSU, on and on. And we have residents and leaders, you and I alike, who are fiercely committed to our community and are eager to improve on the status quo. And yet, despite this strong platform, the St. Louis metro economy consistently underperforms other industrial economies like Baltimore, like Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, heartland growth centers like Denver, Minneapolis, and Nashville, and the nation as a whole. Between 2008 and 2018, our GDP in this region grew by only 5.2%. Now you might say that's a great number, but we lagged the nation, which saw nearly 20% growth in the same time period. This laggard performance, it makes it harder for local companies to attract talent. It makes it harder for entrepreneurs to start businesses. It makes it harder for people to build wealth. His exclamation point is as follows. Now, hear me, I'm gonna go slow. His exclamation point was as follows. St. Louis, you've gotta hear me. He said, systemic racism and residential segregation have had a devastating effect on our region. It has hampered the virtuous cycle of development, business growth, job creation, and wealth building. Now, you can make the moral argument that shared prosperity is the right thing to do, but I don't want to make the moral argument. I would argue that it's the more profitable thing to do. And profits just doesn't mean financial profits. It profits the region. It profits the human spirit. It profits each and every one of us by doing right by other people. It profits me by doing right by you. It profits my soul. It profits my spirit. Not only will racial equity exert a powerful positive influence on the lives and futures of our children, folks, it's an economic imperative for the future of our country and the future of our region. Now, what would that systems change approach to diverse workforce development in our region look like? Here are just a few thoughts. At our bank, at Midwest BankCentre, we embrace and foster diversity because it makes good business sense. We have a number of our leaders here today. They will tell you it makes good business sense. By embracing diversity in people, by embracing diversity in geography, by embracing diversity in products, we spark innovation that allows us to better understand our customers. Our commitment to diversity and inclusion starts at the top. It starts with me. It starts with our executive team that is 70% diverse. I believe this helps us as a team to serve all of the St. Louis region. We also have one of the most diverse boards in Missouri. unlike any you'll see across the nation. Our board reflects our values and the strategy that is important to the future of the bank. As in any important business or civic venture, leadership is key to the success of our region's diversity and inclusion efforts. These efforts will prove themselves worthy if they are embedded in the hearts of leaders and at the core of our anchor institutions, who, as Bruce Katz says, they are market makers. They employ many of us. Equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts must have strategic and operational influence and not be solely anchored in human service organizations. We need alignment. We need alignment between the social sector and the private sector. I think we have to resist the old notion that it's simply the right thing to do and embrace the concept that it is actually the most profitable thing to do. In those older industrial regions mentioned earlier, who consistently outperforms our region, who have no more assets than we have, who have the same historical liabilities around race, I suspect at some point they did their own assessment and decided that it was more profitable to create a future that was based on shared prosperity. Again, to achieve momentum and lasting change, we have to rethink how we foster equity, diversity, and inclusion across our spheres of influence within industry and within community. I appreciate, and I'm coming to a close, I appreciate the work that the Construction Forum will do in the coming months to help those of us in this room and beyond to challenge our assumptions, to project a compelling vision, and to create a shared understanding of what success looks like. To be successful as leaders, we have to be advocates. We have to be bridge builders. We have to be unifiers. You and I, if we are doing our job right, we will make people uncomfortable by pushing boundaries. But I also believe that we will build deep relationships and formidable allies to achieve progress in this region. The Construction Forum's role is to remind us continuously that the choices we make every day are important and have long-lasting implications to the future economic viability of our region. Their job is to be a thought partner and remind us that who we collectively have on our boards and in our leadership roles matter. They are to remind us that how we hire and issue contract matters, that how we hold people in positions of power and influence, those within our networks accountable for their words and actions, matters. Our success in promoting more people into the trades, into management, and then ultimately into ownership comes down to this. Those who have and those who know must champion those who have not and those who know not. I mentioned earlier the importance of sponsors and mentors in my life, the importance of people who have taken me by the hand to help me navigate. For nearly 20 years, I have worked to stabilize people's lives and help them get on a path to social mobility by promoting assets like education, assets like training, life skills, competencies, and the personal networks that everyone needs to participate in economic activity. I call these assets human and social capital, and Midwest BankCentre believes in promoting them too. My move to Midwest BankCentre was founded in my desire to have an even greater impact by working alongside great people and optimizing access to financial capital in a profitable manner for all communities. Folks, I understand the power of leveraging networks, the power of the right platform, and the power of positioning more people for success. Further, I know the key ways to achieve success is to have the right players at the table. Systems thinking is an invitational process to engage all of those who have the potential to influence the desired outcome. In this case, a more robust employee pipeline for the construction industry and the trades. I hope I have shown the importance of shared prosperity. We do not have to wait. We don't have to wait for federal or state policy changes to bring equity and inclusion into our workplaces and our communities. Our intentions and actions are the catalyst for real and sustainable change, systems change. I hope I have helped you unpack what the systems change approach is and how it can be a game changer in creating a more diverse, robust workforce pipeline, a more profitable region, more profitable companies, more wealth for you and your families. I will end by reminding you of my earlier statement. Like you, I love this community. Like many of you, I have chosen to raise my family in this community. I've chosen to stay in this community. My greatest hope is that we call each other in. That we call each other in, not call each other out. We have to call each other in to build a vibrant, more prosperous region, a region that offers opportunity and fulfillment for our children, their children, and the generations that follow. Folks, we actually have within us right now to create this vision. We have within us to create this vision and the outcomes. Thank you.